Assalamu alaikum all. Am I audible?
Walaikum salam.
Okay, I hope you all are doing well, and I hope you have understood what I have been taught in the early classes. And I've received your assignments. I'll review each of them and will give you remarks on that individually. And I would like to encourage anyone who has not yet submitted their assignments, please do submit it. It's a mandatory requirement. So let's get started with our today's session. Okay, so what we are going to cover today is this is what we are going to cover in today's session. Um, we have understood the concept of set state, but we have not implemented in the previous class, and I have given you assignment and asked you to implement it. Anyways, we will know how to implement it by today, and then we have asynchronous programming. What does asynchronous programming mean and why it is necessary? Then we have two concepts, cascade operator and spread operator. That is a Flutter and Dart concepts that we should know. And then we will have Firebase, introduction to Firebase and connection with the Firebase. And after this, we will do register, login, and log out with the help of Firebase. And also, we will do get and post data API integration. Today, we will be focusing on the backend part. We will not focus on the front end. So, first, a set state. Let's create a new project. I'm going to create create app. Let's open up our Visual Studio Code. It's successfully created. State app. Mm, so now let's remove this whole bunch of code and let's write our own code. This is not necessary to delete every code, but just for the better understanding, I'm doing it. We have a special function, main function. This main function does not accept anything, so it's void. Does not return anything basically. And then inside of this main function, we will have run app method, and exchanges to material. Material.dart important. Now let's create a stateful widget. Now we last time we understood what is stateless and stateful widget. Basically, stateless widget does not contain any state. It is without state. It is a static class. It is a static widget. And a stateful widget will contain a state, and it requires to re-render on the screen. So we know that stateful widget have a state object that is the things that are changing in the stateful widget are going to be stored somewhere. So that is called a state object. So by typing here stf and hit enter, and let's name it my app. Let's just remove this constructor. We don't need it. And let's call this instantiate our my app inside of the run app. So now this stateful widget contains two classes here. One is my app and the other is my app state. Since we know in the stateful widget we have state, we need to store the state. So we extend here the state, and this state is of type my app, which is our first class. And this class is instantiating in second class is instantiating into the first class. And this is again a special kind of method create state that is extended from the stateful widget. And this is just we can replace this with the braces as well. And this is again a build method that we have or that we have already discussed in our previous class. So now to understand set state, what we can do is let's change this to material app, and let's add our home full widget, and let's add the body. Um, let's add a text inside of it, my new app, and after this body, let's create a floating action button. And a floating action button will have kind of floating action button type like this on press, and we can create a new method. Let's just say integer counter first, 0, and increment void increment counter. Now let's call this increment counter inside of on press. Let's run this application first. So what we are doing here is we have just created a button, floating action button, and we on pressed event we have called this method increment counter. And what increment counter is doing is incrementing the counter by +1. The counter is initially at 0. Let's print something to see the results as well. Since we have not here initialized anything to show up our results. And let's press a Control J for the debug to show results on inside it. My new app, a basic text, and with this floating action button, let's hit the floating action button. Let's print this. Let's show up this in here as well. It says 0, and this is not incrementing. Since we have not used the set state method, so this is why it is not incrementing. It is incrementing, basically it is showing results in the debug console, but it is not showing results on the UI part, and this is why we need set state. Now what set state do is set state rebuilds this whole build widget tree. Let's set state. inside of the set state method, we will we don't have this one. This is not an overriding method. This is just a simple set state. The generic. Okay. Let's um, let's add this inside. Let's add the set state inside of this increment counter set state, and let's increment this counter inside of. Now this is going to work. Let's reload our application. Now you can see the counter is incrementing and showing up on the screen. So what setstate do is rebuilds this whole build widget tree. Now there is one more concept with this is if we update this counter after the set state, and if we print this counter after it, let's reload our application and see the counter is still updating. And if we put this counter before the set state, it shows the same result if we put the counter before it or after it, but we require the set state method. Now there is a difference between before putting the counter and after putting the counter. So I can show you the difference by, let's add here async, and let's add the await future dot delayed and the duration inside of it, duration in seconds, maybe 4 seconds. So now what we are here doing is we are updating the counter first, which is first initially 0, so it will be 1 over here, and then we are printing this counter, and then we are saying that wait for 4 seconds, and after 4 seconds update the UI or update this whole build widget tree. So what will happen here is eventually after 4 seconds of time, our counter will update on the screen, but it will get updated before the 4 seconds and will show the results on the debug console. So let's run this application. Let's wait for 4 seconds, and it updated the counter after 4 seconds. And let's see if it updates the counter here on the print screen. It updated the counter on the print screen on the debug console basically, but it updated the counter after 4 seconds here on the UI. So this is the difference before and after, and same for the after as well. We have the same difference for the after as well. So that's why we need to have this counter inside of the set state. So this is all about set state. Next, let's see what we have next. Next we have asynchronous programming. So again, let's create a new application for that. So what asynchronous programming is basically, let's create an application. Flutter create async app. Asynchronous programming is basically when we have a main application, main thread working together with another thread. which means there are two processes running together at the same time without our UI gets stuck. For example, if we have a network operation, and a network operation we know takes time to update or to get the data or to post the data. So we require something that does not stuck our UI or that does not block our UI. So for that, we need to have a asynchronous program. So now to understand asynchronous programming, what we can do is we will we can just remove this whole code and we can understand without this code as well. Let's first create a main function and let's import a material as well. Let's create two functions basically. First, we will create a function, maybe download file. Now, this download file, inside of this download file, we will put some dummy code. So the dummy code means that will be downloading something. So let's put some dummy code. So now let's put the same delay, future dot delay duration, seconds, maybe 5 seconds, and then we have another. After 5 seconds, we want something to, for example, if we want to return something, maybe a string, um, my file, my file content. We This is one function download file, and inside of the download file we have some 5 seconds of delay. For example, we are getting some data or downloading some data, and after 5 seconds then we have some string, and that is returning file content. So to show these, one more function we can create to understand this, read file, and we will call this download file inside it. What we are trying to say is, first download the file and then read the file. And we will here call the read file function inside the main function. And since we want to return something here, we will first save this. Let's say result, and this will be of type future string. Now to understand this, we are saying that in future we want a string from this function for, we know this is returning a string, so that's why we have here string. If for example we are returning some integer, so we need to change this data type to integer. And since this is a future request, after 5 seconds it is implementing, so that's why we have a future written over here, and we are going to return this result. And to return this result, this function is also need to have future. Now this result is again a future string, so we need to put something as future string over here. And this download file, we are saying to download a file after it. So what we can do here is we can save this, for example, file data, and file data will be again a future string. If you hover on this will show us error because this is not a string. This is a future string. So we need to have a future string as well. And let's print something here. For example, print on file file data. So now to understand this, we let's print some main start and main end. Main start starts here. Main ends here. So this is the main function we have, and we are calling inside it a read file function. And inside this read file function, we are calling this download file function. And download file function is doing is downloading is just prototyping the downloading function. It's We have the timer of 5 seconds, and after 5 seconds, it should return a string, and this string should be returned over here in the file data, and after returning the string we should have printed this file data here. And this future string, first at the 1 second will 1 2 or 3 seconds, it will be a future object, and after the future object, after 5 seconds, it will be converted into automatically into future string. So let's run this first. Since we don't have a stateful widget, so it will not run in Chrome. First, it should run the main starts here, and then it should run the read file, and then it should run the main ends here. And let's see the sequence. So it says main starts here. This says main starts here, and then we have file instance of future string and main ends here. I've told you that it will return a future string instance or object of future. It should return this string, but it is not returning the string because the function, the main ends here, and it should return the string after 5 seconds, and it is returning the result before 5 seconds. So to resolve this issue and to have this file content return, what we can do is we will use here async and await keywords. We will say async. After the round brackets, we use async, and with async, we will use await keyword, and it shows us error because since we are waiting for the string to complete, waiting for the object to convert into string, so it eventually will convert it into string. So this is not a future string now. This is just a normal string. Now let's save this. Let's reload this. The main starts and the main ends, and after 5 seconds we should see the file content. And here we, after 5 seconds, the file content is loaded. So what happens here is our main functions work normally as it should work, and with this main function, I've told you the asynchronous programming is something that runs simultaneously. Two functions are running simultaneously without blocking the main UI. So here main function starts and the main function ends, and this after 5 seconds it prints the file content. So there's one more thing that we can do if we don't want to use async or await. There's one more alternative to this. We can copy this. Let's comment it out, and let's just let's say remove this await and async keywords. And when we are removing these keywords, it should have a future string. And with this, what we can do is file data dot then, and this then a result. So with the future keyword, we can also use then function. Then what then function is do is the same as await and async keywords. It will wait for the object to convert into string and then print out the data that we require. So inside of this result parameter, we will get the data string data. So we will not print the file data. Now we will print this result data. Let's save this. Reload this. Main function starts, main function ends. My file content. So this is basically asynchronous programming. We can do by two ways: async and await keyword as well, or we can use this then keyword as well. Okay, next we have this double dot or cascade operator and triple dot, that is spread operators. So basically, cascade operator is a sequence of operation, which means it allows us to perform sequence of operation on the same object. For example, if we have a class and there are in that class we have multiple functions, and we want to implement those all functions together, and then this becomes a sequence of implementation. So the sequence of implementation, we have to create again and again the object. We have to call our instance again and again to remove this code redundancy. We can use this cascade operator. I'll explain you with an example. Let's open our Dartpad. It's already been created. Let's remove this code. If you want to test something, or you don't want to use this, you don't want to create a Flutter new project again, and you just want to test something into this Dart file, so you can run your program here as well. And to show that, I'm using this. Let's create a class of person, and to instantiate this class. Okay, so we have removed everything. Okay, we will create a void main as well. Void main. Let's first print something to see if everything is working fine. Yes, everything is working fine. Let's create our class. For example, class person, and inside of this class we will have properties, maybe name, integer, age, and we will have two functions to get this a name and age. So we will call this person class here, or p1 person, And here we will create two functions. Void first function will be get name and print something. And to call this function inside main, we can do p1 dot and p1 dot get name. Get name function is defined inside of it. Let's create this class above it. Void get name class person. Sorry. Okay. Okay. We had that round brackets. Class never have round brackets. Well, void get age, even dot get age. Okay, it's integer, so we need to put two string to convert it into a string. So we have age and name print out. So now we are calling these functions again with the same object, and we are calling this object again and again. So to remove this redundancy, what we can do is we can use this double dot or cascade operator. Let's run this. This should print the same way. This should not have terminator. Terminator means the end of line. So this is printing the same way. So these concepts are important because you may have seen these double dot and triple dot in examples, different examples, or you may see in future. So to understand this, what it do, and for the triple dot, that is spread operator. So the spread operator is used to insert multiple values into a list. So it basically it concise the code, and to minimize the code and redundancy, it's used. And to insert list into a list, it is used. And to understand the spread operator, we can consider another example, var list, and maybe this contains some integer values 1 2 3, and maybe we will have another list 4 5 6, and to concatenate these two lists into one list, um, we can do is var list 3, and let's say var list 3 empty list, and list 3 dot add all, and inside of this add all, let's add list. And let's print out the list 3 as well. Now this is saying that add this list variable or list values inside of this list 3, which is empty initially. So it is printing 1 2 and 3. And now to add another list, We can copy this and let's say list 2. So now to add another list, we have to have these two lines, and to remove these two lines, we can use the spread operator. Now to use the spread operator, what we can do is list 3. Um, we, we can continue with this list 3. Maybe we will add some value first and then we will say 3 dots and list and then comma 2 3 dots and then list 2. Comma is to separate this list from list 2. Let's save this, control S and run. So it's saying 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which means the same implementation, but with other alternatives we can do this. Now this is the concept of spread operator and cascade operator. Now let's see what we have next. We have this get and post data. Um, Before starting this in Firebase, let's take a break. And after this, we will get into Firebase and get and post data API integration. After 10 minutes, at 11:50, we will continue.
Ma'am, I have a question. Ma'am, Assalamu alaikum, ma'am.
Do you have any questions, Umer?
Yes, ma'am. I have one question. I
Yes.
tried a assignment, but the zip file is not going. It's saying blocked for security reasons.
Um,
So it's
your application is not running.
no, no. My application is running, but when I'm uploading the zip file to your email, it is not
Yes.
allowing me. It's saying blocked for
Okay.
security reasons.
Okay. Okay. So what you can do is you can upload it on Drive and then share me the link.
The same drive
Email
where
me.
are the course materials, ma'am?
No, no.
Or
Create another Drive folder and inside it upload your zip file and share me the URL. Email me the
I'm
URL.
sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry, ma'am. I do not follow where should I be uploading it.
You not follow, sorry.
I'm not understanding where to upload in the drive.
Okay, you create a folder inside of your Drive and upload that zip file of your folder that you have created the application inside of that folder, inside of the Drive folder, and then share that Drive link to me. You get
Okay,
it?
got it. Thank you, ma'am. Yes, thank you,
All
ma'am.
right. So let's start with our get and post data. Um, Flutter create get post app. Open up our project. Um, Inside of this, let's void main um, run app material auto import material stateful widget stf my app. Yes, so now to implement the get and post request, we are not going to create an API. We are going to use an API. Um, for that, we are going to use JSON placeholder API. Now, this is an API that this is just a dummy API that everyone can use, and we are going to use this API to post and get data. First, we will implement get data. We will print this whole data in our application. And to do this, first we need to import one package, and that package name is http flutter. Let's copy this http flutter package and paste it in our pubspec YAML file under the dependencies. Under this dependency, let's paste it. Control V and Control S. By pressing Control S, it will automatically install this dependency in our project. started installing this dependency, and if it does not install in your case, you can always hit this button at the top right corner that says get packages. Also, still if doesn't work, you can do what you can do is control J, and inside of this terminal you can type flutter get, and this will install your dependency. Always use the latest version, and after this the dependency is installed successfully. Inside of this state class, um, we have one. Let's create one function first. Void post data, and inside of this function, um, what we can do is first let's do the get data. Get data, and inside of this function we have one method known as get method, and this get method is from the HTTP package. You can see here it is written HTTP package. It will auto import this package. Let's hit enter. And what this get method takes is the URL. And what we have in our URL is, let's create a URL. Let's say string URL. Let's close this. This is the URL we have. We want to get data from this URL. Copy this URL, terminator, and now this get method takes the parameter of URI. It says the argument string can be assigned to the parameter type URI. So it takes the parameter URI. URI is an identifier, and inside of this URI, we can say URI dot maybe parse data, URI dot parse, and URL. So this URL is converting into URI, and this get data will have some response. So let's save this in response variable, and this response variable, final variable, we are not going to change this response, so it must be final variable. We can print this response to see what we get, yeah, what we are getting. But let's just create one override one more function, that is initiate initiate state. It override init state. Yes. So this is an override function of the stateful widget. It is only in the stateful widget. It will not work with the stateless widget. And this initiate state init state function, what it do is, first when we create the application, this init state methods get triggers automatically. And if we don't have any button and we want a function to run, so what we can do is we can call our function in this init state, because it is going to build automatically. So let's call a get data inside of it. And let's print, or let's decode this data. Since we can see that the data is in JSON format, we have objects, we have array, JSON array and JSON object format. So we need to decode this data. And what normally is in what normally we have in APIs is as well, we have the JSON data. When we create our API, we send our data as a JSON data, and either it is a web application or mobile application, we get decode our JSON data. So we can say JSON decode. Now this is the auto importing from the Dart convert package. Now here we can say response.body, because the response itself is nothing, so we need to have a response body. Body isn't the type of feature. Okay, so now we know this is the network operation we are going to do, so we need to have async and await, because it might going to take 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 3 seconds depending on our network. So async and await keyword. And now let's save this into final JSON data. Now let's print this first JSON data. So what we are here doing is we have overridden the function of init state. There is a built-in function. We are just overriding the property of it, and inside of this init state, we are calling our get data function that we have created. And init state runs by itself when we create our application, when the application first runs. And this get data function, and what this get data function is doing, we know the concept of async and await, what these keywords do. And we are waiting for the response, because we know we are doing some network operation. A network operation takes time. And the get function is the built-in function that we have in HTTP library. We have already imported our dependencies here in the pubspec YAML file. And let's just run this first application so we can. Okay, so we have this URI parameter. Get function takes URI parameter, and then since we need to pass this URL, which is a string, so we need to parse it into a URI, which means we have to convert it into a URI. And since we have JSON data, so but we want a string, so we just converted our JSON or decoded our JSON data. And lastly, we have printed the JSON data. So this is just going to print in the debug console. So this is what we are getting. This is the whole data we are getting. Since this data is very long, user ID, title, and everything. Here we have everything. So we can print this on screen as well, since we don't have anything on our screen. So to print this on our screen, what we can do is we need to have a set state. Since it's not going to update on our screen, so set state, inside of the set state, let's create another variable. Maybe my JSON variable, JSON array, an empty array, and inside of it we can say JSON array. Let's change this name little, that we don't have a clash of names. JSON array and JSON data, assigning the JSON data inside. So now let's print this JSON array somewhere on the screen. And let's do one more thing is we will use try and catch block. So what does try and catch block do is, for example, if we have some issue in getting the data or posting the data on the API, or maybe we have some internet connection issues, so this try and catch block basically will show us error exception, and it will not block our UI, it will just print the exception. Or maybe we can do some dialog box to show user that you don't have an internet connection or something. So for now, we just print something if we have some exceptions, and let's cut this code and paste it in our try block. If we have any error in this code, it will print out in this catch. We will get this, and after this, let's add up this in our UI. For the UI, we can use a list widget, list view. Let's first change this to material app, and inside of this material app, we know we have a home, scaffold widget, and inside of the scaffold widget, we don't need add bar right now. What we can do is we will have body and list view dot builder. This list view have the item builder, but before this item builder, let's have one more thing, that is item count, and we and and we don't know the counting of these, how many these are. So what we can do is we can just pass JSON array dot length. The length of this JSON array, and item builder will have two things, that is context, and the second thing is index, and this is the function. So this index is the item count. Basically, it will start with the 0 and then 1, 2, 3. So inside of this, we can have our post maybe, and we say um, our array name, that is JSON array, and JSON array index, and JSON array index causing null. Okay, it should return something. So return. Let's return the text widget. Inside of this text widget, let's print out something. For example, we have here the title and the body, user ID. Let's say title in dollar. Let's close this and say post. This variable name post, and post. Inside of this post, we have here title. This should match the name of this one, the title. And after this, we can use let's say \n maybe, and say this body. Next we have, and again the body will have dollar. Use this post, post body, and then we will have backslash, two or three times maybe, to just make code little cleaner. It cannot have the comma because it's a return statement. So let's see first. We have the list view builder. Inside of this list view builder, we have two things, item count, and item count is our array length. And what our array have? Our array have the whole JSON data, and and after that we have item builder, which takes context and index, and index can be 0, 1, 2, 3 up till the item count length, and then we here are just printing our data. Let's just save this and hit reload. Now, as we can see, we have this title and body, and this whole data is printing. And for example, if we change this length to something 1, so what will happen? We will have only one data since the length is 1. So this is the get data request. And now let's implement the post data. Now for the post data, so there one thing that about post data, what we can do is we can post our data here, but it will not show up our data in this web page since this is not our API. So we will post our data in this title and body and user ID, and this ID parameter is incrementing by itself. So what we can do is we will post our data here, and we will see for this ID, if the ID is unique, which means our data is successfully posted. So let's just remove this, and let's just remove this as well. And let's just remove this list view as well, or let's just remove this whole body list view builder. Okay, so now let's create another method, void post data, and inside of this post data we have one function. We are going to use async and await keywords since it's a network operation. So try and catch block for the exceptions. We are going to print something, um, exception, maybe let's say e dot toString simple. And inside of this try block, what we can do is we will use the post keyword, that is again the HTTP method, and it again takes URL. So for that we know URI dot parse URL. And one more thing we are going to pass is the body, and the body. So this body will contain our data that we want to post, or that we want to send our data onto the API. So for this, we know again the name should match. Copy this title, and we can pass our data. For example, if I say my first title, this data can be anything. And the next thing we have is body, um, post request body, and then we have this user ID. For example, if we want to pass in user ID 3 maybe. Okay, so this is the post request, and since we have used the async, we need to use await as well, and we need to save this into some response variable. We can print our response here, print response dot body, and this response dot body should have a unique ID. If this response dot body will have unique ID, which means our data is successfully uploaded. And to trigger this function, what we can do is we can create maybe we can create a, let's say, center widget. We will create a button inside of the center widget, child, and child will have an elevated button. Inside of this elevated button, we will have again a child and on pressed. Inside of this on pressed, our function name is post data. And then we have child as text, and let's say press this button. Okay, so we have here a button, a simple button with one text on it, and on pressed of this button we will call this our post data function that we have just created. And this post data have async and await keywords, which means it will take time to post our data. And we have in our body we have, let's run this. And in our body we have this title, body, and user id. The parameters should match with our api. Either the api is created by ourselves or it's some dummy api, and we are printing here the response of that api. And in this response, we usually we have a successful result or result 202 or 200, any number, or mostly we have a successful or unsuccessful result that we can print as a dialog box as well. Now let's press this button, and let's say Control J, and this shows a unique ID 101, which means our data is successfully inserted. Let's hit the let's change this to something, let's say second title. mm, let's change this user id something 13. Save. And after saving this, let's press the button again, and let's say my second title, and the id is again the unique, since it's 101 id, because it is not uploaded on our post api, so that's why the id is always same, but the data is uploaded successfully. If you have some your own api, you can try this with it as well. You can try this with python flask apis as well. So now let's move on with the firebase. Let's just stop this. Let's create another application for the firebase. Okay, create my firebase project. And for this firebase, what we need to do is, okay, so let's open our firebase project inside the Visual Studio, and let's open our firebase, firebase.google.com. And you need to sign up over here. I'm already signed up, and let's go to the console. So what basically Firebase is, it's a backend service, and it is supported by Google. It is built and supported by Google. And with this Firebase, you can perform your get and post API that we have. You don't need to create your own API for that. Firebase handles it by self, and we can have the Firebase connected directly with our application. So this is the main advantage of Firebase, that you don't need to require have a separate database and the separate API for it. And there are many services of Firebase. Um, if I show you, there's many services like real-time database, Cloud Firestore. We might not use Cloud Firestore today. Um, Maybe we will use in our next class. We have this authentication. We will use authentication, and we can have machine learning as well, and performance monitoring. We can check our performance as well. But the thing here is Firebase may be sometimes costly when it comes to production, because we have a lot of data to upload or to get, so it might be costly. But for now, we can use it. So let's name our project first Firebase app. Um, with a naming convention error, let's hit the continue. We don't need Google Analytics for now. This Google Analytics is for chat purpose. We don't require right now. Let's hit the create project button and let's wait for it to create. Now to set up the Firebase, you need to set up separately for Android and iOS. Let's hit the continue. And this is our project created. Now to connect with our application, this Firebase, we can use iOS and Android. Since I'm going to focus on Android right now. So Android. Now we need to include our package name here. So how we will get our package name? So uh, package name is something unique for every application. Either the application is on the Play Store or your local applications. So inside of this Android folder, inside of this app, and then source, main, we have this Android manifest file. And inside of this Android manifest file, we have this package as package name. Let's copy this package name and let's paste it here. We can add an optional name as well for our application. Now, but let's ignore this optional things. Okay, it says for the Google sign-in, if you want to create a Google sign-in, you need to provide the SHA key as well. Since we are not going to use Google sign-in today, um, let's download this. Mm. And let's see what it's saying is inside of this my application, inside of my app, you need to place this Google services.json file. So inside of this, let's see, we have this control X and the desktop Firebase project. Inside of this Android and app, we need to paste it here. Let's check. Inside of this Android app, we need to paste it. Control V, Google services.json file. Hit the next button. Now we need to add something. We need to check this if this is added. Okay, the hierarchy is inside the project. We have this build.gradle file. Okay, let's close this. Inside of this Android, we have this build.gradle file. Now there are two build.gradle files. One is inside of the source and one is outside of this. One is inside here build.gradle, and one is inside of this app. So it says inside of this project, which means this one. So inside of this, we need to check this under the repository. We have this Google. Um, yes, we have this Google under the repository, and then we need to add this class path. Let's copy this. Add this line inside of this dependencies. Control V, save it, and then again the Google. It's already there. Next, we need to change app level build.gradle. App level build.gradle means inside of this app folder we have build.gradle file. We need to change this as well. And we need to add the plugin, which is this one, Google Services. Copy this plugin and let's paste it here under the com.android application. And then we have this Firebase BOM. Let's copy this dependency under the dependencies. Under the dependencies, we need to add this. Let's hit the next button. Okay, let's continue to the console. Now let's run our application first to see if everything is working. In the dart file, make sure you have saved everything. Run without debugging. We will create this application in our phone. And since you can see here, we can see our package name com.example Firebase project, which means it is successfully integrated. Let's run this application in our phone as well. Since we have implemented for Android, and so let's open this. The application is running on Chrome browser. Now let's check this on our phone as well. Since it is running, let's add two packages in our pubspec YAML file. We need to include two packages to connect Firebase. One is Firebase 4. Let's copy this package and add inside of our dependencies. Okay, there are two type of dependencies. If you notice, tab dependency and dependency, we need to add under the dependencies, because if we build a release version of our application, and if we have this dependency under the dev dependencies, so it will not run with the release version. So we need to include this inside of the dependencies. So Control S, it will download. And then we have one more package, Flutter Auth. Firebase auth. Firebase auth. Let's search for it. And this one. Let's copy this. Let's save it. And let's now create. First, let's see if it is installing successfully. Okay, so it's installed. Now let's create folders. One is let's say services, and the other folder can be database manager. Let's create a new file inside of it. Database manager dot dart, and inside of the services we are going to create one file calling as authentication, maybe services dot dart. Okay, so let's first create our database manager. And this here authentic. Let's okay, let's say save class authentication service. Authentication service. Let's save this, and let's create our first. First, let's inside of this left side of panel, we will click on this authentication and hit this get started. Since we are going to use this authentication, and here we have multiple tabs. First we have users, then we have sign in. We will click on the sign in tab, and inside of this we have multiple options. We have multiple providers, email and password, Google sign in, Facebook, GitHub, Yahoo, etc, etc. So we will be using this email and password, and let's enable this and save it. So it's enabled, and now let's go to the users, and now to run this Firebase authentication we will be using Firebase auth object, and we will create the Firebase auth object, and this Firebase auth is from the class. We will import this class as well. This is Firebase auth, that package that we have in our dependency. Firebase auth dot instance, just dot instance. This Firebase auth is from the Firebase auth package, and let's see if our application is running. We have not created application. Since we need to clear out this code as well. Inside of this, we will create a new user. Let's say we create a function, create new user, and then this create new user will take two parameters, string email and string password. And then we will have this is going to be future because again it's a network operation. Future, future, and async and await keyword we are going to use async. And let's make a try and catch block again with the print statement. E dot um, e dot to string to convert the exception into a string. And inside of this try block, we will have user credential object, and user credential will have an await keyword, and then we will have auth, that that object that we have already created, this auth object, and auth dot we have one function create user with email and password. Now this function is a built-in function of Firebase. We don't need to worry about it. And after this user credentials, we can have our user and user credentials that we have just created dot user. And since we don't want this user to return null value, so let's return this user. And this function is for the sign up. This is for the sign up. And we will create sign in. And first let's um, have this main.dart file clean up. And let's just have our stateful widget. First we will have our void main app. Run app. And here we can also say material app. Material app. Inside of it we will have our home. Okay, first let's import our material package. Mm, okay, it says home. Inside of this home we can call our class. For example, if we have class name as, let's create a class stateful widget, let's say login screen, and this login screen will be, we will be calling over here login screen. Now what we have done here is we have created a material app over here, and inside of this material app we have login screen, and we can remove this, and we don't need to now call the material app again here. So now we have to create the UI part. Since we are not focusing on the UI, we can copy paste it. Let's open a folder. Save this in this new, open new window. We are going to We are going to copy paste this scaffold widget whole UI part. It will take time if you create this whole UI. So we have copy paste the UI. Now what we have, we don't have the sign in user function right now, and we don't have this email controller as well. We will create this. Um, let's create first. Let's first understand what is going on with this. Uh, with this UI, we have our scaffold widget, and inside of the scaffold, we have our container, and the container has some color, child center, and child have a form. A form contains a key, and this form contains a text first, a login, and inside of this form we have two text fields, which is one is this text form field that says email. This is for email. Label here is email, and the another text field is for password. This one text field is for password, and to get the data of this text field, or to get the ID of the text field, so we have this controller here. We will initialize our controller, and we validate our text. We can validate our password as well. If the value is empty or not, it shows error if it is empty. And we can also validate our email. And this key is important here, form key. This form key will help us to validate. If the result is validated successfully, then we can sign in. Then we can call anything sign in function or anything. So now let's create this. This is calling a registration screen. This is again another text field that says to jump on our registration or sign up screen. Now let's create this new file called registration screen dart, and um, we will create this in a minute. First, let's create this email controller, and to create this email controller, we can have text editing controller, email controller. Let's copy our email controller, name of that email controller, equal to text editing controller, and then we can have our password controller, and then we can have our key, to initialize our key, finally key, form a global key. Inside of this global key is of type form state, since it's a form key, and our all errors are gone. This registration screen is still showing us error. So to remove this, let's import our registration screen. We have not yet created. Now to create this registration screen, we can create a stateful widget. Let's say registration screen. And let's import our material, and now let's import our registration screen here as well. All the errors are gone. Let's first run this before doing anything. Our registration screen and we have to call this create new user inside of this registration screen, and we have to build a UI separately for the registration screen as well. We will copy the UI. We will just focus on the functions this time. Till then, let's understand what we have done so far. So we have created services, and inside of the services we have authentication service.dart file, and inside of this authentication we have Firebase auth. We have created an object of Firebase auth class, and we have initialized the instance of it. Then we have our create new user function to create a user, and this create new user takes two parameter, email and password, and this will create user credentials. User credentials is going to have a auth variable that we have already created first, and then this have a built-in function create user email and password. It takes two parameters, email and password, that are required parameters, and we are passing our email and password inside of it. Then we are creating the user and we are returning that user. We have this all on the try catch block. So let's see. Okay, the application is, so this is the login application we have here. We have first, let's take side by side. So here we have first our text widget as login with some styling properties, and then we have this email controller that will take our whatever we will type here email. This email controller will get this, um, and then we have this password text field, which will be on with the controller will get all the password. Controller will get all the text that we are going to type in the password. And then we have this not registered or sign up text widget, and then we lastly we have this login button. And we if we hit enter on, if we click on this not registered sign up button, this will go up on the next screen, since it's not showing anything because we have not built any UI for the registration screen. And if we click on this login button, it says email cannot be empty and password cannot be empty, since we have already given the validation inside here. Validator takes one parameter as value, and this value, if the value is empty, it should show, it should return the string, else it should return the null. And same for the password. You can add other validator conditions as well. For example, if we say value is greater than 6 characters or 10 characters, the password should be 10 characters long or something. Or for the email we can say, um, for example, an email should not have a white spaces. We can have multiple conditions as well. So since we know now that for the registration screen, again we are going to copy first our new window, open folder, in this registration screen. We are going to copy this scaffold widget, or we can copy this whole build method as well. Let's just paste first this build method. Okay, now let's create a form key here as well. Let's close this and let's create a form key again by saying final key, uh, global key. It's again this form state, form state of the type of form state, and then we have error for the name controller, email, and password. We will create three controllers here. Let's copy our controllers. Name and email controller will be the same, and one will be the name controller. Copy this. Name, email, password. Okay, so we will create this create user. When we hit the sign up button, it will trigger this create user method. Let's create this create user method. Void create user. The spelling is correct. Let's copy this one. And inside of this create user, this will be a async function. So async, um, let's say await and auth. We need to create an instance first of authentication service. Since we are going to use this create new user, we need to create the authentication service class object. So what we can do is authentication service, and we say auth here, um, authentication service, and we will use this authentication auth service to call the method create new user that we have created. And we are going to pass our email and password. Since we have this email controller, we can pass our email controller dot text, and for the password we can say password controller dot text, and we are going to save this in a variable called result, and let's say let's just save this and see what we have. Reloading our application. Okay, it says no Firebase app has been created. Firebase.initialize app. So we need to first initialize our application, initialize Firebase. So to do this, we need to come on our main.dart file, and inside of this main.dart file, and inside of this main function, because we have to initialize Firebase only once, and we don't require to initialize again and again. So inside of this main function, before the run app, what we can do is widgets flutter binding dot ensure initialized. This will ensure if the Firebase is initialized or not. Await, um, because since it's going to take time to initialize, so we need to use await and async keywords. In Firebase dot initialize app, maybe initialize app, Firebase dot initialize app. Okay, let's import our library Firebase core, since we this Firebase is from the Firebase core package. We need to initialize. Now we need to first rebuild our application. Once it is registered successfully, the login process is very small, a very short process. We can just understand as well because it's already one. It's running still. What will happen here when we type email and password? Um, in this Firebase console, under this authentication users, we will see our email here, and the password will be not showing because it will be decoded. So here we can see as many users as you create. The application. Okay, now let's hit this sign up button and let's type in something. Let's type in email abc at gmail.com. Let's say abc 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Let's hit the sign up. So as we hit the sign up and we refresh this ABC Gmail is registered, and we can now log in with this ABC Gmail. We can try something else as well. For example, if we say ABBC sign up, this new email is registered now. To clear out this whole inside of this UI, what we can do is um, inside of this create user, we can say email controller dot clear, or if result is not equal to null, the result is successful, then what we can do is clear our name controller dot clear, and same for the email controller and the password controller. Control V, email controller and the password controller. And we can jump on our previous page. Let's just see if this cleared out or not. When we hit the sign up button. Okay, so let's change this first. As we hit the sign up button, it clear outs the fields from the UI. So if we see, let's reload this. So every email is get registered. Now to understand login, we will see the code. We will just understand it. We will not type in code. Um, so this is the registration screen. We have already implemented it, and to now this is navigator.pop context. This what it is doing is if we want to jump on the previous screen, for example, if we want after the sign up we want to log in, so we can do this to jump or to pop out the previous page. And inside of this main function, we have this login screen as a main .dart file. So inside of it, we know on the login button, we have this function as sign in user, and the sign in user is And the sign in user is calling one function of login user, that is of auth dot your login user, and this auth dot login user is created inside of the services authentication services. Inside of this authentication services, we have this login user function and the sign out function. I'll explain the sign out function later. First, login user, and login user will also have email and password. And what we will do is user credentials again, the user credentials object, and user credential will take auth dot sign in. Now the uh, method is changed here. First, we have the create user with email and password. Now we have sign in with email and password. And sign in with email and password again will take email and password as same as the create user. It's just the same. And we have returned the user credentials as same as the previous steps. And this try catch blocks. So the whole function is just the same as the previous one. And inside of this main.dart file, we have called this login user function. We have created, instantiated our authentication service class that we have created, and we have passed our email controller and password controller to text. And if the result is null, then it shows some error, print out some error. Otherwise, it should clear out the text fields if it is successful. And if it is successful, it should jump on another page, that is dashboard. Now this is another way of jumping onto the next page, navigator dot pushed name. So what it is doing is how it is actually performing is what we have done here on the main function. We have this run app, material app, we already seen this. And inside of this material app, we have one thing, that is routes. We can define our routes at the top of top level. For example, login as login screen, register as register screen, and dashboard as dashboard screen. And for example, if we want to use this dashboard, so we can only call this dashboard, dashboard name. This can be anything name, we can say dashboard hhh or anything. So this dashboard, we are calling this dashboard name, copying this name, and we are calling it here by passing our context. This is another way of um, switching from one screen to another screen. So this is all about the sign-in function. Um, what we can do, we can copy this to see the results. Since we have to build, since we have to build our application, we have Google Services JSON file not inside of this class, mm, this project. So that's why it will not run. We will open this in a new window. Let's copy this. Let's not copy everything. Let's copy this sign function just to show you the results. I'm copying it. Main.dart file inside of the state method, state class. We will save it, and the authentication service will have this sign-in function. It should be inside of authentication class. Main.dart is showing error because we have not initialized our auth. We can initialize. We need to import our file as well. Project services, import authentication services. Okay. Now let's build this again. And the sign out, let's understand the sign out as well. Let's quickly wrap up this. Okay, so sign out button is very simple, very easy. We have this auth, Firebase auth object, and it have one function that is built-in function again dot sign out. It should return this. Just that's it, and we need to call this. We need to call this inside of our dashboard. So we have initialized again our authentication service class, and we have called this auth dot sign out. Here we have called this auth dot sign out here, and we have used here the then function that we have understood how this then works, and then we have this pop out our login screen again. To go back on the login screen, we have this pop function, and this sign out will work with this elevated button we have created for sign out. Let's test the login properties. And what we have, I think the password was ABC12345678, if I'm not wrong. abc@gmail.com. We Let's again enter ABC 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. This must show some error since we have not created the dashboard class, so it will not trigger anything inside of the sign in. If it is successful, it should jump onto the dashboard, and we don't have dashboard yet. Let's copy this file. Let's paste it. This sign out is not working. Okay, we have to create the sign out as well. So to create the sign out, we can again copy this one. Let's reload our project. ebc@gmail.com, abc 1 2 3 5 6 7 8. Login. We must have done something wrong. Activity record visibility true. Well, let's just run this project. Main.down. This is same. We must have missed out some step. Maybe. You can ask me questions if you have any. If you have any questions, you can ask me. Since the application is building, What we have covered is set state, asynchronous programming, cascade operator, and subspread operator differences. Introduction to Firebase, connecting with register, login, log out, API integration, get and post. Then we have Firebase services and another assignment. You have to implement inside of your email app that you have already created. You have to implement the sign up, sign in, and log out functionality. And also, you have to figure out how to implement Google sign in and Facebook. So, if we see in our Firebase sign in methods and add a new provider, and we have here Google and Facebook options, you can implement both of these or any of the uh, methods, or if you want to try any of other options you can try, but you have to implement at least one of them. And to implement this you have to have this SHA key. I'll show you the video of how to get this SHA key, and I'll upload that video on a Google Drive folder that already being shared with you. So here we have our application. Mm, what we can do is abc@gmail.com, abc 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, and once we hit the login button it shows our dashboard, and dashboard has some basic UI, um, simple list view with some text, some generic text, and here we have two action buttons at the top. Here we have this elevated button. Uh, One is with the I can edit, and the other is exit to app. And exit to app has the sign out functionality. If we hit the if we hit this exit to app button, sign out button, it will jump onto the login screen and it will sign out. Any questions if you have? Once you will try everything, you will understand it. And if you will not try anything, you will not get any of these. So you should try it by yourself. And if you have any queries, you can ask me on the group or you can ask me on WhatsApp. In the next class, we will cover the AI with Flutter, and that will be a little bit more difficult than these three classes. So you should practice it before we cover the next class.
Thank you so much, Lena.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz. You can leave if you don't have any questions.